Well, forget flying on a wing and a prayer. Try just flying on a prayer. Welcome, everybody. I'm Neil Cavuto. And at the risk of droning on yet another drone, we are getting reports of another passenger plane swerving out of the way of what appears to have been a drone, this time in Australia, where a quick-thinking pilot avoided a near collision by turning the plane very sharply after spotting a flying, blinking object. Oh, and when I say near collision, I mean really near, like 100 feet near this plane. Sound familiar? Well, something similar happened over the skies of Tallahassee, Florida, not too long ago. But why does this keep happening? And what can be done to stop it? Philip Holloway is a commercial pilot, and good to have you back, Phil. But, I know I don't want to make a big to-do out of nothing, but the fact is there are 7,500 drones in this world. They're growing at a clip of about 100 a month, I'm told. And I know they're all shapes, all sizes. But when they get near planes, I start getting worried. Should I?
Absolutely, you should be worried. These drones are really becoming a menace, not only to commercial aviation, but to general aviation as well. Anybody who gets on an airplane of any type really does face the risk of encountering one of these drones. You know, we don't have anything out of the FAA in terms of guidance on this, and we haven't had anything since 1981, which really went to remote-controlled aircraft. We're due to see some regulations.
When you say no guidance, I'm sure for larger drones they have guidance. Where does the guidance stop? I mean, these small ones that are almost look like the kind you saw remote control when we were kids. I mean, but where do they draw the line on what they watch, what they don't watch?
They don't watch anything. That guidance is from 1981, and it dealt with these remote control airplanes, and it says, as a suggestion, you're not supposed to fly them higher than 400 feet, for example, or within a couple of miles of an airport. But that's just not sufficient with what we know of today's technology. These drones can fly much higher and much faster. But what we do have is we have the criminal law that can protect us, because it's always against the law for people to endanger the lives of people regardless. If it's a criminal negligence, if it's intentional malice, things of that nature, there are state laws and federal laws that will protect us and govern these types of situations.
All right. Now, I hear from a lot of FAA folks who email me, and usually off the record, and what they're telling me is don't make a big to-do out of these really tiny ones. And believe me, I'm no Werner von Braun here, but I do remember birds doing a lot of damage, getting sucked in planes' engine. And I'm thinking, like, if a bird can do this damage that we saw in November 2009, I shudder to think what a similar size drone can do.
I certainly don't want to hit one of them. I don't care what size they are. One of these small drones, whether it be the size of a remote control airplane or even larger, if you suck that up into a jet engine, it can cause a catastrophe, and people's lives really are at risk.
All right, do they show up on radar? I mean, when you're flying around, Phil, I mean, or is it only the larger drones that might wander into airspace or get too close to an airport that catch our attention? I mean, when you're looking at all those blips on a screen, are those drones among them?
They're usually not. No, they're not. They're not usually large enough to be picked up on radar, and if they're really low, they're going to be underneath radar coverage anyway. So even if they're flying at an airport or very near an airport, and I've seen that. I've seen people flying remote control airplanes around general aviation and commercial airports, and they will not show up unless they are of sufficient size or at a sufficient altitude.
All right, on a commercial basis, there were only a few dozen of these not too many years ago. And as I said, now 7,500 just to the continental United States. Again, that worries me, just the sheer numbers. You?
Absolutely. I saw today just on Amazon.com, you know, there's a whole variety of these things that are available to the general public. I do know this, a lot of the manufacturers are installing GPS technology into these things that will cause them to cease operation when they're at or near an airport. And so they're trying to build in some protection devices into the items themselves so that they just won't operate. But we really don't have any formal laws, formal FAA regulations on this subject just yet.
Yeah, so that's their call. They're doing it of their own volition. There are no laws or rules or regulations that require it. That bothers me. All right, Phil, thank you very, very much.
Thanks for having me, Neil.
All right, with so many midair scares, you can imagine some flyers are feeling spooked. Jonathan Serries at America's busiest airport, Hartsfield-Jackson in Atlanta. Jonathan.
Hi, Neil. Well, the reports of near misses are certainly concerning passengers, but they tell us not to the level of fear. Take a listen.
No, I travel every week for business, so I'm really okay with, what the FAA is doing.
When you get guys who are, with remote control planes or stuff like that, hobbyists, sure, absolutely. But I'd like to think that, the authorities would take care of it. But I guess it's something I'll think about now for a little bit anyway.
Things happen. You just got to be prepared. And I'm quite sure we got trained and professional people in those positions that will be observing and make sure this type of thing don't happen.
But passengers differed in their views when it came to issues of enforcement and regulations. We asked them whether or not they thought federal and international aviation authorities needed to do more to keep commercial drones away from passenger planes. Listen to this.
FAA needs to set out a regulation guideline, which I think they do, but it needs to be more strictly enforced.
You read in the paper that these technologies are going to be taking off more and more for different kinds of reasons, so there's got to be some sort of control mechanism to make sure they stay out of the way of airplanes.
So just a few comments from some of the passengers passing through the world's busiest airport. Neil?
Jonathan Serry, thank you very, very much. Well,